Coming up next, the Wingfeather Saga, Looking Back. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Bookin It. I am, of course, your humble and eloquent host, Cooper Cobbs. And joining me today are our three panelists, Tanner Lewis,
Hello.
Isaiah Reski,
Hi.
and, of course, Matthew Killingsworth.
Howdy.
Well, fellas, how you guys doing today?
Swell.
Well, it's a bright and early day.
That's all right. I haven't brushed my teeth, done my hair. So I'm not in good shape
Yeah.
right now.
I just woke up a couple minutes ago, too.
Isaiah rolled out of bed, set up his microphone, and hit record. That's what he did today.
And I've been up for an hour and a half.
See,
Yeah.
Y'all are lucky that I did not sleep in later than I did because I would not have seen any of this and I would probably still be sleeping right now. But
Same.
luckily,
Yesterday I woke up at 11, so yeah.
I woke up at 8:30, so had just enough time.
Yeah, me, Matthew, and Tanner, we had a sleepover. We woke up at like 10:45, and we got like 8 hours of sleep at a sleepover, which is insane. Yeah. But if you do the math, that means we went to bed at 2:30. So, well, Tanner, what about you? You haven't spoken yet. Besides your little hello, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, tired right now, but doing great.
That's right, and Tanner was not on for our last two Warden episodes. So, Tanner, please give us your thoughts, very extensive thoughts, if I may, about the last half of the Warden the Wolf King.
So, there's a lot of things that can be said about the last part of the Warden the Wolf King. Like all the drama that happens, all of the loose threads that get woven together that have been brought in throughout the entire Wingfeather Saga. And that end is very emotional and, in my personal opinion, a very well-written end to a book because he doesn't really leave any room, like, except for, like, this one thread at the very, very end. But, like, he ties everything up so well. There's not anything that could be brought out or expanded upon except for the end where they go to
Right.
the...
Which is a great ending.
Yeah, like, really just a very great ending.
Yeah, I always say the great ending of it. Well, I say this in my head if I don't say it out loud. A great ending to a book leaves you wanting more, and that's exactly what he did. You're like, no. Like Isaiah, I think I read it on the episode when he texted me and was like, I need to find out what happened to Janner. Is he writing another book? All that good stuff. All right, so before we start asking the questions that I have written down, I'm going to read the poem at the end of The Warden and the Wolf King. Does anybody else have The Warden and the Wolf King like with them right now or no?
Nope.
I do not.
I'll read it. Ahem. The world is whispering, listen, child, the world is telling a tale. When the sea foam frosts and the winter wild, or the Findrel flies in the gale. When the sky is mad with a swirling storm, and the thunder shakes the hall, child, keep watch for the passing form of the one who made it all. Listen, child, to the hallish wind, to the hush of heather down, and to the voice of the brook at the stormy bend, and the bells of Rising Town. The dark of the heart is a darkness deep, and the sweep of the night is wide, and the pain of the heart when people weep is an overwhelming tide. And yet, when the tide runs low, as the tide will always do, and the heavy sky where bellows blow is bright at last and blue, and the sun ascends in the quiet morn, and the sorrow sinks away, when the veil of death is dark and torn as under by the day, then the light of love is the flame of spring, and the flow of the river strong, and the hope of the heart as the people sing is an everlasting song. The winter is whispering, green and gold, and the heart is whispering too. It's a story the Maker has always told, and the story, my child, is true. I always like that poem. I think it's really beautiful.
Isn't that's the one that Armulin the Bard wrote for Janner?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Alrighty, guys. Let's get down to it. I have a set of questions here. So, question number 1. Final thoughts on the Wingfeather Saga, and try to make these very extensive, as in more than a minute. It's very extensive, isn't it?
I mean, we already kind of said this last episode, but I really liked how just everything got tied in from the first episode, or from the first book to the last book. Like we've mentioned many times before, like little details from before are like played a part in the final book. But before, like in the first, second, or third book, you didn't really know that they played a part or anything.
Right.
So yeah, I like that.
Was that longer than a minute? I'm kidding.
It was close. It was 30 seconds.
I'm
It
kidding.
doesn't matter.
It's close.
It doesn't matter. I can stretch that to 4. I haven't been here for a few episodes, so it's time to spill. By the way,
True.
guys, for this, ever since I've been like on these episodes, my tongue has been restrained. All restraints have been cut loose. I can speak freely.
That's right.
And it's amazing right now. And I've got 4 pages of notes right here, just waiting.
Go
Speak
for it.
freely, son. Speak freely.
This is the episode.
Okay, so expounding upon Isaiah's just how everything meshes so well together. I said so earlier in other episodes. I said that the Fork Factory, like Sarah Cobbler, and then her like being the light to all that, to all the inhabitants of the Fork Factory. I said that I couldn't answer that question earlier in that episode, and now for all you listeners, I can finally answer that question. It's because I find that Sarah Cobbler never would have been able to change so many lives without leaving Janner and her staying behind. Janner's act of bravery was even more impactful because she had never made it out with him. For the part that everyone gets sad about, Sarah never sees Janner while he is alive for the rest of the saga. While some with... Oh, man. I have bad handwriting, people. Yeah, Janner just... She never sees Janner again, and I think that's, like, disheartening and sad, but it just it empowered her, like, the idea of Janner, like, being there, like, coming back to rescue her sometime. Like, that was what drove her on, right? And I find it very impactful that, like, and sad that they weren't able to see each other again, but it was just a very moving part. And then back to what I've been saying throughout the entire saga, the planning of the book. Now, everything for the ending and the planning of this book has just been phenomenal. Page 4, Sarah Cobbler comes in. Second book, like towards the end of the second book, we find an entirely new character that pushes forward the entire plot line of the story. And then we find the Holare and Holoel, like in the like first 3 pages or so, like 5 pages of the book. And then we come back to the very end, and voila, people, the Holare and the Holoel are what are powering the Nag the Nameless. And while we're hearing about all these things, just time after time after time, we have people coming in and just propelling the plot line forward while they weren't important at the very beginning. You heard about these people, like you saw Jurgen, like things like this, but they never like really resonated with you, right? But now you've got these people that are literally the entire plot line of the story, just making everything move. Like, there were so many hidden aspects of this book that were just amazing. So everyone knows about plot holes, right? There's the parts of the plot that just drop and, like, they get dropped and nobody, like, touches them. I think that Andrew Peterson used this thing that I like to consider called a plot tunnel. So he's got these plot holes everywhere that then tunnel back through the entire story, popping up at random places until they fully emerge and they're just the backbone of the plot. Just because you can't see your spine doesn't mean it's there, people.
Is that it? Wow, it's very impressive. All right,
Nice
Matthew,
job,
you want to give
Tanner.
your thoughts?
Sure. I agree with both of them also, but I think, I know Tanner likes to talk about Sarah Cobbler a lot, but I think for me the biggest, like, bring back thing from the first book is the dragons, because they've been in every book, and you've seen lots of other characters come and go, and some become main characters for, like, up to a few chapters, and then they just, like, disappear, and, you know, they meet a lot of different people. But the sea dragons are just always kind of there, even though they're not right with them. They still, like, they think of them randomly. They have, like, visions with them. They can hear them. They're just, like, always kind of there. And then it, like, at the end, it turns out that, like, even the sea dragons have disagreements, and some of them join the right side and help fight Nag, and one, Jurgen, the Dragon King, gets swayed by Nag the Nameless into melding with him. That's what it's called, right? Melding with him and becoming the, like, biggest, baddest bad guy ever. And so, I don't know. I think the dragons are the coolest part of the book for me, but there's also a lot of other cool stuff in these books, like what Tanner is saying. There's no point in repeating everything, but I do have to say, I feel like maybe, like, I'm not just trying to, like, make this sound like the best book series ever. I'm going to be honest here. Like, there were some plot holes that never really got brought back. A lot of them did, and that's why I loved the second half of Warden the Wolf King so much. It was because that's where you were just seeing, like, almost every chapter.
Do you have any examples of those things that didn't get
Do I
tied
have
back
an
together?
example?
Do you have any examples of those?
Well, let me think about it.
Yeah, like you said,
What are
like
you
the plot hole that didn't get tied back. Oh, okay. So you might give me my thoughts. Okay. So first of all, I don't think there's been like a great fantasy novel for a long, long time, and I think like that replicates the beauty of like a Lord of the Rings or Chronicles of Narnia or something like that. And I think that the Wingfeather Saga does a pretty darn good job of being a great fantasy like a series during this time. I know it's hard to write a fantasy novel today. There's so many bad fantasy novels out there. And Andrew Peterson just came in here and just said, "I'm gonna write a good story." And he just come here and he just tells a great story with lovable characters, an incredible plot, and just keeping his eyes on the Lord the whole time. And it's really just beautiful and it's great. We talk about everything, but it really is just a beautiful story. And that's the number one thing I love about it. Just a brother, sister, brother story, and just it's just really beautiful. So that's really what I like about the Wingfeather Saga.
Yeah, and while Matthew's continuing to gather his thoughts, I agree, Cooper, like that all of this, and I'm not disagreeing in any way. I'm just expounding upon this right now. It's so stereotypical, like Matthew was saying at the beginning of this, but yet it's not. He adds so much variation to it that it's unique in its own way, and I think people like stereotypical things as long as they've been put in a good variation. Would you?
Yeah, fantasy is the most stereotyped genre ever.
Exactly.
What is?
Fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I mean, like there has never been an almost exact, pure, original work. Even Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings have things tied back. Like there's this book called The Well at World's End. It was published in 1898, and Tolkien he actually took a character from that book and made it a character in his book. So there's really no originalism anyway. But Andrew Peterson does a great job of copying, but not making it seem like it's a copy.
I agree. And I think
Yeah.
it really does get better every book. That's what y'all kept telling me. And the first time I tried to read this, I was just so bored and put out with the first book that I didn't want to finish it. But it really does get better and more interesting because I agree it starts very stereotypical in the first book, almost the full first book. And then a little bit, like, it gets a little interesting at the end of the first book. I feel like just enough that if I'd gotten to that point, I probably would have read the second book, even if we weren't doing this. But I don't know. I'm glad y'all made me get through the first book.
Okay, thanks. I mean, that's great.
Woohoo!
my selling point for the people that have not wanted to read this book. I kind of tell them, like, I force them through it. I say, read the first book. By the time you get halfway through the second book, you're hooked, and you'll go all the way through the entire saga, and you'll be a fan.
That's right.
Like, there's no halfway in between. Like, I kind of like the Wingfeather Saga. I kind of don't like the Wingfeather Saga. There's really just two types of people, the people that like it and the people that hate it.
Yeah, and the people who don't like it didn't get through the first book.
Yep.
Alrighty, let's move on to the next question. So this is the best part, and this is a little vague, so I'm going to specify this a little bit. I'm gonna say best scene, best scene, best chapter, stuff like that. I know what Tanner's is, so Tanner, why don't you go ahead, go first, and get it out of the way.
Yes, mine is The Reckoning with the Bunch, and
That's right.
and it is, I like it, and so now I can finally cut loose this restraint that I've really had the hardest time with throughout this entire saga. It's the protect, protect, protect part. Now, you guys have been talking about this a lot.
I know. It's really beautiful.
So, I just kind of want to expound upon this a little bit if we have enough time, Cooper.
Yeah, we should.
Okay, so there's the Reckoning with the Bunch, and then I have other favorite parts that go down a little bit. The Reckoning with the Bunch part's the coolest, which is why it's my favorite. But we've got the part where Artham has to jump down into the rock roach, into the
Yeah,
Gargan
that's one of
rock
mine,
roach,
too.
and then all Janner sees is protect, protect, protect in his eyes, right? And then we've got the turning point in Janner's life when he jumps off the boat, and when he jumps off the Chimeran boat into the water to save Tink. Protect, protect, protect. And then we have Reckoning with the Bunch, and basically the entire Monster in the Hollows book. Protect, protect, protect. All he's doing in these books is protecting Calamar. Like, it is very moving, and sometimes I don't want to protect my brother. I'll say this. Maybe I'm the antagonist in this point. But in order to prove this point, there's this, my second favorite single book in the world is called The Mapmaker Chronicles by A.L. Tate. And there's this one quote that I think messes with this point perfectly. So there are these brothers, okay? And then they have this younger brother, and then he is the laughing stock of the family. Like, they punch jokes at him, they punch him, they shove him underwater, they do all this stuff. And then, but woe to the outsider, my favorite quote ever, woe to the outsider who messes with Quinn. And it was just amazing because they would mess with him, but then no one could mess with, outside of their family, no one can mess with him because they were so tight-knit.
Yeah.
Like, I think that just works perfectly with the Wingfeather Saga too, because they're just so tight-knit that they can punch jokes at each other, they can shove each other underwater and stuff, but anyone that outside that doesn't do that lovingly, woe to them.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Wingfeather Saga, the times that Kalmar was hurt the most was inside his own family. But definitely on the outside of his family, Janner always stood up for him, and I mean, it's just really beautiful to see the story come full circle. Like in the first book, it's kind of, he knows it's a responsibility, he doesn't like it. And at the end of the book, he knows that his responsibility is even greater because Kalmar is a king now. Then the second book, he's annoyed, and like Tanner said, the changing point was when he dove in the water to rescue Kalmar. And then the third book, like Tanner said, it's the Reckoning with the Bunch. He finally is full on throw Warden. And then I think me and the guys, Tanner wasn't on that one, we talked about the Warden and the Wolf King is basically just Janner becoming Artham level awesome and protecting his brother.
Surpassing Artham, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Because
yeah,
Artham's just kind of like hanging out in a treehouse, not helping.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like what, I won't spoil it, Hunger Games kind of thing. But, yeah. And then the fourth book, when he sacrifices himself to save the brother. Oh, spoiler alert. But that's just, it comes full circle. All right. Isaiah or Matthew, which one of you guys want us to go next?
I'll go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Okay. Favorite part of the whole series is, so originally it was probably the same one as Tanner, but then when I read the last book, specifically the section Throg, I had to change my mind. And it's the part where, so basically in the whole section of Throg, they're going back and forth between like 3 different stories going on at the same time. There's basically Janner and Kalmar and how they're doing down in the depths of Throg / the castle Throg. And then it goes to Bonifer Squoon sometimes and tells about like continuing that story, which it does like 2 or 3 times throughout the whole section. And then it goes to Lily and the Hollows folk fighting off all the Bat Fangs and the Gray Fangs and all the Fangs that are invading every single night. And so my favorite parts of the entire series are Lily fighting and uh, fighting the Fangs with the Hollows folk every night for those
Yeah.
few weeks while January and Kalmar are gone. And the reason why this is my favorite part is because like she's kind of just been like she hasn't had a huge role at any point before this. So I just kind of like got used to after 3.5 books, just got used to her just being like kind of like moral support, I guess. Like she was a crippled
Yeah.
young girl. She doesn't really do anything. She just like is moral support. They all love her. They got to protect her. It makes their lives a little bit harder. But but like she really is like she's courageous. She's strong. She's confident in herself and in her friends, and she gives that confidence by playing these encouraging songs that both distract the Fangs and empower the Hollows folk to fight better. And so I thought that part was just amazing. And then you also get to see like after the wars during the day she'll sleep and she'll be all tired and like her lips will bleed from playing her instrument all night, her lips and fingers, and she'll be all sore, but she keeps going and she just keeps going, persevering, because she knows that they can't win the battle without her. But even then, she's still always humble when she comes in contact with other people. She does her job and does it well. And then it gets even better when she starts talking to Rudrick, and like she at this point I was literally like, wow, she's actually like basically a superhero. She's like super cool. She can play music that wins whole battles, and then she can also talk to dogs, which before this I guess I didn't realize was like the most coolest thing ever, but it actually kind of is, because she can make dogs fight, she can make them carry messages, she can make them drag her around town if she needs to get somewhere fast. She can like just get dogs to do her every bidding. So she starts talking to Rudrick, and then dogs join the battle, and then they just keep doing even better. And all this, if Lily wasn't there, they would have lost like day one. So it just shows like how important even the seemingly smallest like factor, or in this case person, could be. But she's just a really great character, and I love like the writing in that part, and just like how it expresses her feelings and how other people encourage her or discourage her and how she gets through it. So that's my favorite part.
Right, Isaiah.
Um, so I have like two main parts that are my favorite, or both of them aren't really just parts. They're like throughout the whole book's like scenes in it and stuff like that. One of them was basically Tanner's, where he was saying like every time Janner or like Artham like became more like Throne Warden, saying they kept saying or like protect, protect, protect. Another one is just seeing the Wingfeathers' growth over the time. Before they were scared to fight, and then in the end they were like very like they became very brave and had experienced a lot, and you could just see their growth throughout the whole book, and how it saved them because of that growth.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's it. My favorite part, I guess I have two. I'll start with my favorite part, though. It's where Janner is waiting on Kalmar, and Kalmar is in the Fane of Fire, and Janner's just sitting there and thinking, and then he has like a full-on encounter with the Maker
Oh, I love
in
that
his
part.
mind.
It's
That
just
one
like
is
be
just
still.
really,
Be
yeah,
still.
exactly, and it was just really beautiful because it's you could really just like you can look at whenever you did that in your own life with the Lord, and you just sat down and you just realized that you needed just to be still and to stop, and it really is just the most beautiful scene in the whole saga, and it's really especially because we're all older brothers here that just I don't know, words are failing me, but just the fact that the Lord is always there for us and that He tells us just to be still sometimes, and it's just really cool. And then second time, like Tanner said, it's whenever Artham jumps into the Gargane Rock roast pitch and Janner sees his eyes and they just say protect, protect, protect. And it's every time somebody says something like that, I always get chills because as again, older brother here. All right, well, we gotta hurry things up. So, anything you guys took issue with in the Wingfeather Saga?
I will quickly say, like, I didn't take issue with very much other than one, the first book being not super entertaining or meaningful,
Yeah.
I guess, until like after you've read all of them, then it actually makes sense. But I mean, it was kind of hard to get through in my opinion. But the rest was good, obviously. And the second thing was what I was saying earlier. There's just like, I don't even know if I'd use the word plot holes exactly, but there's just some things that like didn't really have to be in there and were kind of like just almost wasting time, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's like with Harry Potter. Whenever she introduces something, you're like, that has to be something later down
Exactly.
the road later, and when it doesn't happen, then you're kind of disappointed.
Yeah. Well, there's just a few things like that, and you asked me to give examples, so I'll just give like a couple examples. Like I feel like Claxton and Merrily, like they turned into these great fighters. They had like this tiny little side story that wasn't even very filled of their like relationship, I guess, and how it's growing. I'm quoting like with my fingers right now, growing, and it was kind of a lame little story anyway. But then I was like, oh, now they're two like epic fighters, so they have lame names, but they're probably gonna go back and like help save the whole world, and they didn't. They just like disappeared from the entire story, which basically everyone in Scree did. So I was a little confused about that.
Yeah.
That was really the main
you
thing.
you mean Gammon and Merrily. That's what you mean. You don't mean Claxton.
Yeah, that's
and
what I
Merrily.
mean. Well, basically the whole story of all it. But yeah, Gammon and Merrily.
Yeah, I don't
So-
like into Gammon and Merrily either. Yeah. All right. And Matthew, you want to say something about Arthur too, don't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was really I've said this in the last one, but I was very disappointed in how Arthur turned out, because this was actually you're right. This is probably the most devastating and biggest thing I took issue with in the whole thing. That he just kind of left them and went to go pout in a treehouse while his whole thing was protect, and instead he left them in the third book. And I was like, oh, he's totally coming back later in this book, or
Yeah.
at least early in the next book. Nope. He comes back after Janner dies, and he gets
Yeah,
lucky that Calmer didn't die. Janner did his job.
I don't really have.
But like he really I feel like he failed as
Yeah.
a protector, and the only
I
part
hear you.
like after the third book when he leaves, the only part I really liked about Arthur was when he was sharing the stories of Anira, and it was good that it was Arthur because he was the one in that circle that had experience of Anira and that had lived there. But other than that, I felt like Arthur like on coolness level went way down.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tanner, Isaiah.
I mean, I don't really have anything else like that I had issue with. It's just to fill in some plot holes. That's about it. And then, yeah.
Thanks for saving us some time. We're gonna have to
Yep.
speed up here a little bit. Tanner, what about you?
Okay, I don't really have any large problems with the Wingfeather Saga. It's all minor things that aren't really like big issues, but I do have like a few small things like just a few things that like aren't important at all, but nothing big.
Okay. You don't want to give any specifics or anything?
Nah, not any specifics that I can
Okay.
think of, but I do because I haven't read them for
Yeah.
like 2 months, but
Yeah, and I didn't really take anything really big. Like Matthew, I didn't like what they did with Arthur, but I'm willing to give them a pass because they had to do that in order to make Janner kind of look more awesome. So I'm gonna give him a pass on that.
Yeah.
Not like very low pass, like you just passed. But my big thing, yeah, like
You passed the Cooper
like Tanner
test.
was Gamer and Merle. Like the ending of part 2, I just did not like at all. Game and Merle, I feel like I guess he tried to wrap up their story and he didn't. I really wish that he had tried to work harder on part 2. I know that he was probably like, oh, I have to work on part 2 when I have this great story with these 3 siblings going on. But I think part 2 could have been really great. And if he just spent some more time on it, it would have been exceptionally great. Well, guys, looks like we're going to have to make this a 2-part episode. So
Oh yeah.
let's do some donor shout-outs, and then we'll come back. We'll
Next
decide when
week.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. Actually, this will be better because we had a little disagreement on when this was going to happen. All right. Donor shout-outs. Okay, how are we going to do donor shout-outs?
Read a list very quickly.
Okay.
Donor shoutouts: Nana, Ben, Pappy, and Wayla. Isaiah's grandparents: Becky, Isaiah's uncle Sebi, Aunt Jeannie, and Uncle Sam, Isaiah's aunt and uncle, and Chris
Heck it on.
Cooper Hackathon.
Thank you to my cousins Moses and Zara.
And also make sure to check out Chris's podcast, Like Lightning, all caps, where he reads his short stories and flash fiction. It's a very good
Yeah,
podcast.
really
I
great
listened
podcast.
to a couple episodes this week. Very well written stuff.
Really great writing. All right. Hey, guys, thanks for listening. And until next week.
Y'all keep on booking it.